A red-eye flight from Los Angeles to New York. Two strangers in first class. But when tech millionaire Elias Vaughn looked across the aisle, he saw the woman who broke his heart 5 years ago, and a little boy with his eyes.
Imani, is that you?
She thought she'd never see him again. He thought he'd moved on, but one glance at the child beside her and everything changed.
Elias, this is Micah.
5 years of secrets, 5 years of silence, and now trapped together at 35,000 feet, the truth could no longer hide.
How old is he?
He is 5 years old.
The math was simple, the consequences devastating. Will a man who lost everything for success fight for the family he never knew he had? And can a woman who's built her life around protecting her son learn to trust the man who shattered her heart? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. Imani Carter hurried through the crowded airport terminal, gripping her 5-year-old son's hand tightly. Her elegant black pantsuit contrasted with Micah's dinosaur t-shirt and light-up sneakers. They were running late for their red-eye flight from Los Angeles to New York. "Mommy, are we going to miss the plane?" Micah asked, his big brown eyes wide with worry. "No, baby. We'll make it," Imani assured him, though she was checking her watch every few seconds. She'd built a perfectly organized life for them in New York over the past 5 years. This quick business trip to LA wasn't supposed to disrupt their routine. When they finally reached the gate, the airline attendant smiled at them. "Mrs. Carter, we were about to call your name. You're our last first-class passengers." Imani nodded gratefully and guided Micah down the jetway. She'd splurged on first-class tickets because she knew Micah would sleep better and she could work while he did. "Window seat," Micah exclaimed as they found their spots. Imani helped him buckle his seatbelt, then settled into her aisle seat, already thinking about the presentation she needed to finish before landing. "Would you like a juice box, sweetie?" she asked Micah, pulling one from her bag. He nodded eagerly and she helped him with the straw. Imani finally took a deep breath. They'd made it. 5 more hours and they'd be back home, back to their routine, back to the safe, stable life she'd built for them, for herself, after walking away from the chaos of her past. The flight attendant was making final preparations when Imani heard commotion at the front of the cabin. She glanced up absently, then froze. Elias Vaughn was being escorted to the seat directly across the aisle from her. Her heart stopped, then raced, then seemed to drop straight to her stomach. Elias, her ex-husband, the man she'd walked away from 5 years ago, the man who never knew she was carrying his child when she left. He hadn't seen her yet. He was talking to the flight attendant, smiling that same charming smile that had once made her weak in the knees. His dark hair was shorter now, more polished than the messy style he'd worn when they were married. His suit looked expensive, custom-made, the kind of thing you'd expect from a tech millionaire, which according to the business magazines he now was. Imani quickly turned away, hoping he wouldn't notice her. Maybe she could get through this flight without him seeing her. Maybe... "Imani!" Too late. She looked up, meeting his startled gaze. "Elias," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. His eyes widened with shock, then something like pleasure. But before he could say anything else, his gaze shifted to the seat beside her, to Micah. Imani saw the exact moment it happened, the exact second when Elias noticed the boy's eyes, a perfect match to his own. The exact shade of amber brown with those distinctive gold flecks. The same shape, the same long lashes. Elias's face drained of color. "Mommy, who's that man?" Micah asked, oblivious to the emotional earthquake happening across the aisle. Imani swallowed hard. "Just another passenger, sweetie. Finish your juice." But Elias was still staring, his eyes moving between Micah's face and Imani's, questions forming that she could read without him saying a word. "Imani," he started, his voice barely audible. She shook her head slightly, a silent plea. Not now. Not in front of him. The flight attendant interrupted the tense moment. "Mr. Vaughn, can I get you something to drink before takeoff?" Elias seemed to remember where he was. "Just water, thank you," he said, but his eyes never left Imani's face. The plane began to taxi, and Imani turned to help Micah with his tablet, setting up his favorite cartoon. Her hands were shaking. Elias whispered across the aisle. "Later," she mouthed, grateful when the flight attendant reminded everyone to put their devices in airplane mode. The next hour was the longest of Imani's life. She pretended to read a magazine while Micah watched his show, but she could feel Elias's eyes on them, studying them. She finally turned to face him. The dim cabin lighting cast shadows across his face, but she could still see the hurt and confusion in his eyes. "Is he mine?" Elias asked, though they both knew the answer. Imani nodded once, unable to speak. Elias leaned forward, running a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made her heart ache. "Why didn't you tell me?" he whispered, pain evident in every word. "You weren't ready," she said simply. "That wasn't your decision to make." "Wasn't it?" she challenged quietly. "You were never home. You were chasing your big dreams, your big money. You didn't have time for me, let alone a baby." Elias flinched as if she'd slapped him. "I had a right to know." "I was protecting him," Imani said, looking down at Micah's sleeping form. "And myself." "From what? From me?" "From disappointment," she replied. "From having a father who might show up for birthdays if they didn't conflict with investor meetings." Elias's jaw tightened. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" Imani raised an eyebrow. "Tell me you would have chosen us over your company back then." He couldn't answer, and they both knew why. "What's his name?" Elias finally asked, his voice softer. "Micah." "Micah," he repeated. She carefully slid out from under Micah's head, placing a pillow beneath him. "I'll be right back, baby," she whispered, though he was sound asleep. She walked to the galley at the front of the cabin, leaning against the counter and taking deep breaths. She'd known this day might come eventually, but she wasn't prepared for it to be tonight, trapped in a metal tube at 35,000 feet, with nowhere to escape. "Imani!" She didn't need to turn around to know Elias had followed her. "Go back to your seat, Elias." "Not until we talk about this," he insisted. "You kept my child from me for 5 years." She turned to face him then, anger flaring. "Don't you dare make me the villain here. Where were you when I was crying myself to sleep every night? When I was throwing up every morning for 3 months? When I needed someone to hold my hand at doctor's appointments?" "I didn't know," he protested. "Because you weren't there to know," she shot back. "You were never there, Elias. That's why I left." He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "I made mistakes, I know that. But this—" He gestured toward the cabin where Micah slept. "This is different. This is my son." "Now," Imani said. She'd spent too long building walls around her heart where he was concerned. When she returned to her seat, Micah was still sleeping soundly. She sat beside him, stroking his cheek gently. After a few minutes, Elias returned to his seat as well. "He looks like me," he said quietly. Imani didn't respond. "What does he like to do?" Elias asked, undeterred by her silence. "What's his favorite food? Does he play any sports?" "Elias, stop," Imani whispered. "Please." "I've missed 5 years of his life, Imani, 5 birthdays, his first words, his first steps, everything." She looked at him then, really looked at him. When they landed, Imani efficiently gathered their things, hoping to make a quick exit. But Elias was right behind them as they deplaned. "Let me give you a ride," he offered as they walked through the terminal. "We're fine," Imani said. "I've already arranged transportation. Please, Imani, we need to talk about this." "Not now," she said firmly. Micah looked up at Elias curiously. "Your eyes look like mine," he observed innocently. Imani felt her heart stop. Elias crouched down to Micah's level, a soft smile on his face. "They sure do, buddy. That's pretty cool, isn't it?" Micah nodded, suddenly shy but intrigued. "Micah, we need to go," Imani said, taking his hand. "What's your name?" Micah asked Elias before they could leave. "I'm Elias," he replied, glancing up at Imani with a look that asked 1,000 questions. "That's a funny name," Micah giggled. "Micah," Imani scolded gently. "It's okay," Elias said, still smiling at the boy. "It is kind of a funny name." Imani checked her watch pointedly. "Our car is waiting." Elias stood, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a business card and handed it to her. "My number. Please call me, Imani. We need to figure this out." She took the card reluctantly, her heart heavy with secrets and regrets. "Sometimes people just look alike, baby." she said, knowing the answer wouldn't satisfy him for long. As their car pulled away from the curb, she caught sight of Elias standing alone on the sidewalk, watching them go. For 5 years she'd told herself she'd done the right thing. For 5 years she'd convinced herself that Elias Vaughn was better off without them, and they were better off without him. But now, seeing the pain in his eyes, the wonder as he looked at their son, she wasn't so sure anymore. The car turned a corner, and Elias disappeared from view. But Imani knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Imani stared at her reflection in the hotel bathroom mirror, splashing cold water on her face. 3 days had passed since the flight, and she'd barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Elias's face, the shock, the hurt, the determination. "Mommy, cartoons are on," Micah called from the bedroom. She dried her face and forced a smile before joining him. "Just one show, okay? Then breakfast." Micah nodded, already absorbed in the colorful characters on screen. Imani's business meetings had finished yesterday, but she'd extended their hotel stay, unsure about returning to their apartment. She knew Elias. Once he set his mind on something, he was relentless. Her phone buzzed with a text message. It was the 3rd one from Elias since they'd landed. "We need to talk, Imani, please." She ignored it just like the others. What was there to say? She'd made her decision 5 years ago when she walked out of their marriage with nothing but a suitcase and a positive pregnancy test. The memory of that day still stung. "I can't do this anymore, Elias," she'd said, standing in the doorway of his home office at 2 a.m., "waiting for scraps of your attention when your precious company doesn't need you." "That's not fair," he'd protested. "I'm building something for us." "No," she'd said quietly. "You're building something for you. I was just the wife who kept the home fires burning while you chased your dreams." "Imani, please." "I filed the papers yesterday," she'd interrupted. "My lawyer will contact yours." "You're divorcing me?" The shock in his voice had almost made her waver. Almost. "This isn't a marriage, Elias. It's me loving someone who doesn't have room in his life to love me back." She'd turned to leave. "Room service," called a voice. Frowning, she went to the door. "We didn't order anything." When she opened it, her heart stopped. Elias stood there, holding a tray with coffee, orange juice, and a plate of pancakes, shaped like Mickey Mouse. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, blocking the doorway. "Bringing breakfast," he said simply. "May I come in?" "No. How did you even find us?" Elias shrugged. "There are only a few hotels near your company's New York office. It wasn't hard." "That's creepy, Elias. That's determination," he countered. "We need to talk." "Is that Mickey Mouse pancakes?" "I'm an old friend of your mum's." Imani crossed her arms. "Micah, eat your breakfast. Mr. Vaughn and I need to talk privately." "But I want to talk to him too," Micah protested. "Later, sweetie, please." Reluctantly, Micah focused on his pancakes, and Imani led Elias to the far corner of the room. "This is inappropriate," she whispered angrily. "You can't just show up here." "What choice did I have? You won't answer my calls or texts." "Because I have nothing to say to you." Elias's expression hardened. "Well, I have plenty to say to you, starting with the fact that you hid my son from me for 5 years." "Lower your voice," Imani warned, glancing at Micah. "I want to be part of his life, Imani," Elias said, his tone softer but no less determined. "He's my son." "Now you want to be a father? After 5 years?" "I didn't know I was a father until 3 days ago." Elias ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "You didn't give me a chance." "You had a chance," Imani said bitterly. "Every day of our marriage was a chance to show me that family mattered more than your ambition." Elias's eyes softened. "I know I failed you, Imani, I know that. But don't punish Micah for my mistakes. I'm protecting him. From what? From knowing his father?" Imani glanced over at Micah, who was happily drowning his pancakes in syrup. "He's happy. We're happy." "He deserves to know who I am," Elias insisted, "and I deserve to know him." Imani felt tears threatening and blinked them back. "You can't just walk into his life and disrupt everything." "I'm not asking to take him from you," Elias said gently. "I'm asking for a chance to be his father, to be in his life." Before Imani could respond, Micah called out, "Mommy, I'm done. Can I show Mr." This one's a T-Rex and he's the king of all dinosaurs, Micah was saying. Wow, he looks tough, Elias replied. Which one's your favorite? The Triceratops, Elias suggested. Yeah, that one. He has 3 horns for fighting. That's right. Did you know Triceratops means 3-horned face? Micah's eyes widened. Really? Cool. Imani couldn't bear it anymore. Micah, it's time for Mr. Vaughn to go. But Mommy, no buts, sweetie. We need to pack for our flight home tomorrow. Elias stood, brushing off his pants. It's okay, buddy. Maybe I can see your dinosaurs again sometime. Tomorrow? Micah asked hopefully. That's up to your mom, Elias said, looking at Imani with a question in his eyes. We'll see, she said non-committally. Micah, please put your toys away while I walk Mr. Vaughn out. In the hallway outside the room, Imani turned to Elias. Don't do this again. Don't show up unannounced. Then answer my calls, he countered. I'm not going away, Imani. He's my son. You keep saying that like it gives you rights. Where were you when he had colic and cried for 3 months straight? Where were you for his first steps? His first words? His first day of preschool? Pain flashed across Elias's face. That's not fair, and you know it. I wasn't there because you didn't tell me he existed. Would it have mattered? She challenged. Would you have chosen him over your precious company? I'd like to think I would have, he said quietly. That's not good enough for me. And it's not good enough for Micah. Elias took a step closer. I'm not the same man I was 5 years ago, Imani. People don't change that much. Yes, they do, he insisted. Especially when they lose everything that matters. The intensity in his eyes made her look away. I have to get back to Micah. I want to see him again, Elias said. Properly, with your permission this time. Imani hesitated. I'll think about it. We're staying at the plaza, he said, handing her a card with his room number. I'll wait for your call. After he left, Imani leaned against the door, trying to steady her breathing. Seeing Elias with Micah had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. Not just because of how quickly they'd bonded, but because of how different Elias seemed. The man she'd left 5 years ago had been ambitious but distracted, always chasing the next deal, the next meeting, the next million. This Elias seemed more present, more focused on what was in front of him rather than what was on the horizon. But could she trust that change? Could she risk Micah's heart on the hope that his father had truly become a different man? The next morning, Imani was packing their suitcases when her phone rang. It was her mother. How's New York, sweetheart? Evelyn Carter asked. Complicated, Imani replied, sitting on the edge of the bed. Mum, something's happened. What is it? Is Micah okay? He's fine, he's watching TV. Imani lowered her voice. It's Elias. He was on our flight from LA. There was a pause. Oh Lord, did he see Micah? Yes, and he knows, it's obvious, they look so much alike. What did he say? Evelyn's voice was concerned. He wants to be in Micah's life. He showed up at our hotel yesterday with breakfast. And how do you feel about that? Imani sighed heavily. Confused, angry, scared. Scared of what, baby? That he'll hurt Micah the way he hurt me, that he'll make promises he can't keep. Or, her mother prompted, knowing her daughter too well, or that he really has changed, Imani admitted quietly. And I've kept them apart for nothing. You did what you thought was right, Evelyn said gently, but maybe it's time to reconsider. What if he breaks Micah's heart? What if he doesn't? Her mother countered. What if this is Micah's chance to have a father who loves him? Don't you want that for him? Tears filled Imani's eyes. Of course I do, but you're still hurt, Evelyn finished for her, and that's understandable. Elias wasn't there for you when you needed him most. But people can change, Imani. Look at your father. Imani knew what she meant. Her own father had been absent for much of her childhood, putting his career first. It wasn't until Imani was a teenager that he'd finally realized what he was missing and made amends. Now, he was a doting grandfather to Micah. I don't know what to do, Mom. Yes, you do, Evelyn said softly. You're just afraid to do it. After hanging up, Imani sat for a long while, watching Micah play with his toys. He was such a happy child, bright, curious, loving. She'd done her best to give him everything he needed, but there was one thing she couldn't give him: a father. And now his father wanted to be in his life. With a deep breath, she picked up her phone and dialed the number Elias had given her. "Imani." His voice was eager, hopeful. "We're leaving for the airport in 2 hours," she said. "If you want to see Micah before we go, you can meet us at Central Park in 30 minutes, the playground near the east entrance." "I'll be there," Elias promised. "Thank you, Imani." "Don't thank me yet," she replied. "This doesn't mean I've decided anything." "I understand." She hung up and turned to Micah. "Hey, sweetie, how would you like to go to the park before we head to the airport?" "Yes," he exclaimed, jumping up and down. "And," she took a deep breath, "Mr. Vaughn might meet us there. Would that be okay?" Micah's face lit up. "The man with the dinosaur facts? Awesome." Imani's heart clenched. It was so easy for children to open their hearts, if only adults could do the same. At the park, Micah raced ahead to the swings while Imani found a bench nearby. She checked her watch. Elias was late. Part of her was relieved. Maybe he wouldn't show up after all. Maybe this was proof that he hadn't changed. "Sorry I'm late," came a breathless voice behind her. She turned to see Elias jogging toward her, carrying a small gift bag. "Traffic was terrible." "You brought him a gift," Imani frowned. "Just something small," Elias said, sitting beside her. "Where is he?" "On the swings," she nodded toward Micah. "Look, before you talk to him, we need to set some ground rules." "I'm listening," Elias said, his eyes still on Micah. "Don't tell him who you are, not yet. He's too young to understand the complications." "So what am I supposed to be? Just your friend?" "For now, yes." Imani was firm. "This is all new to me too, Elias. I need time to figure out how to handle this." "Fine," he agreed reluctantly. "What else?" "No promises you can't keep. If you say you're going to call or visit, you'd better do it. I won't have him disappointed." "I would never. You've disappointed people before," she cut him off. "Me, specifically." Elias's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Anything else?" "We do this at my pace, not yours. If I think it's too much for Micah, we slow down. If I think you're pushing too hard, we take a step back." "That seems one-sided," Elias objected. "It's non-negotiable," Imani stated. "I've been his only parent for 5 years. I know what's best for him." Elias looked like he wanted to argue, but instead simply nodded. "Okay, your pace." "Mommy, push me," Micah called from the swings. "Coming, baby," she called back, then turned to Elias. "Remember what I said." "I will," he promised. As they approached the swings, Micah spotted Elias and his face lit up. "You came." "I sure did, buddy." Elias smiled, his voice thick with emotion. "I heard you like swinging." "I go super high," Micah boasted. "Watch me." Imani gave him a gentle push and Micah pumped his legs, going higher and higher. "Be careful," Elias called nervously. Imani smiled despite herself. "He's fine. He does this all the time." "Still gives me a heart attack," Elias muttered, watching Micah's every move with an intensity that surprised her. After swinging, Micah wanted to try the slide, then the monkey bars. Elias followed him everywhere, helping him climb, catching him at the bottom of the slide, cheering him on at every step. His focus never wavered from his son. This was not the distracted, ambitious man she'd left 5 years ago. This was someone different, someone who seemed to understand the value of being present in the moment. "I brought you something," Elias said to Micah as they took a break on a bench. He handed him the gift bag. Micah eagerly pulled out a small plush triceratops. "Wow, it's my favorite." "I remembered," Elias smiled. "Thank you, Mr. Vaughn." Micah hugged the toy to his chest. "You can call me Elias if you want," he offered, glancing at Imani for approval. She nodded slightly. "Elias," Micah sounded out carefully. "That's still a funny name." Elias laughed. "I guess it is." "Are you Mommy's friend?" Micah asked, curious. Elias looked at Imani, hesitating. "Yes," he finally said. "Your mom and I are old friends." "From before I was born?" "That's right," Elias nodded, his eyes never leaving Imani's face. We've known each other a long time. Do you live in New York like us? Micah continued his interrogation. I live in California, Elias explained. In Los Angeles. That's far away, Micah said, disappointment in his voice. It is, Elias agreed, but I visit New York sometimes for work. Will you visit us next time? Micah asked hopefully. Again. I'd love to do all those things, Elias said to Micah, if your mom says it's okay. Imani checked her watch, feeling overwhelmed. We should go, we need to catch our flight. 5 more minutes? Micah pleaded. Please? 1 more trip down the slide, she compromised. Then we really have to go. As Micah ran back to the playground, Elias turned to Imani. Thank you for this. I haven't decided anything yet, she reminded him. I know, but it's a start. He hesitated, then added, I meant what I said about spending more time in New York. Don't uproot your life for this, Elias. We need to take things slow. It's not just for this, he insisted. The New York office has been in the works for months. But yes, being near Micah is a big incentive now. Imani studied his face, looking for signs of the old Elias, the impulsive dreamer who made promises he couldn't keep. But all she saw was sincerity and determination. I don't trust you, she said honestly. Not yet. I understand, he nodded. I'll earn that trust back, Imani, for both of you. Mommy, watch me, Micah called from the top of the slide. They both turned to watch him slide down, his arms raised in triumph. Elias pulled out his phone and quickly snapped a photo. His first picture in my phone, he said softly, more to himself than to Imani. The simple statement hit her harder than she expected. For 5 years, Elias's phone had been filled with business contacts, meeting reminders, and investment opportunities. Now it held a picture of his son. Maybe he really had changed. We need to go, she said, calling Micah over. Do we have to? He whined. Yes, sweetie. We have a plane to catch. Micah turned to Elias. Will you come see us at our house next time? Elias knelt down to Micah's level. If your mum says it's okay, I'd love to. She'll say yes, Micah said confidently. Won't you, Mummy? Put on the spot, Imani found herself nodding. We'll figure something out. Elias stood, clearly wanting to hug Micah but restraining himself. It was great seeing you, buddy. Thanks for showing me all your playground moves. Thanks for my dinosaur. Micah held up the plush triceratops. You're welcome. Take good care of him. As they walked toward the park exit, Micah skipped ahead, clutching his new toy. I'll call you, Elias said to Imani. About visiting. Okay, she agreed. But remember, your pace, he finished for her. I know. They reached the street, and Elias hailed a taxi for them. As the driver loaded their luggage, Elias handed Imani a folded piece of paper. What's this? She asked. My schedule for the next month, when I'll be in New York, when I have meetings, when I'm free. He met her eyes. No more surprises, no more excuses about work, just transparency. Imani took the paper, stunned by the gesture. The old Elias had guarded his schedule jealously, changing plans at the last minute when better opportunities arose. Goodbye, Elias, she said, unsure what else to say. Goodbye, Imani. He looked past her to Micah, who was already climbing into the taxi. Bye, Micah. I'll see you soon. Promise? Micah called back. Elias glanced at Imani before answering. I promise. As the taxi pulled away, Imani watched Elias through the rear window. He stood on the sidewalk, watching them until they turned a corner and disappeared from view. I like your friend, Micah said, hugging his dinosaur. He's nice. Yes, Imani agreed quietly. He can be. She unfolded the paper Elias had given her, studying his meticulously detailed schedule. At the bottom, he'd written a note. I never stopped loving you. I just didn't know how to love right. But I want to learn, for him and for you. Imani quickly folded the paper again, her heart racing. This was exactly what she'd feared. Not just Elias bonding with Micah, but Elias awakening feelings she'd worked so hard to bury. Mommy, are you okay? She looked at her son, their son, and forced a smile. I'm fine, baby, just thinking. About Elias? Yes, she admitted. About Elias, As the taxi wound its way through the busy streets toward the airport, Imani stared out the window at the city rushing by. For 5 years, she'd been running from the past. Now, it seemed, the past had finally caught up with her, and she wasn't sure if she wanted to keep running anymore. 2 weeks had passed since their return to New York. Imani sat at her kitchen table, staring at her phone. Elias had called 3 times since they'd gotten back, each time respectful and patient, asking if he could visit Micah. She'd put him off, making excuses about Micah being busy with school and activities. The truth was she was afraid of how quickly Micah had taken to Elias, afraid of how naturally they had connected, afraid of her own feelings, which were more confused than ever. "Mommy, when is Elias coming to visit?" Micah asked, looking up from his cereal. He'd asked the same question nearly every day. "I'm not sure, sweetie," Imani said, avoiding his eyes. "But he promised," Micah insisted. "He said he would see me soon." Guilt twisted in Imani's stomach. She was the one preventing that promise from being kept, not Elias. "I know, baby. I just need to figure some things out first." "Is it because you don't like him?" Micah asked with the direct innocence only a child could manage. Imani nearly choked on her coffee. "What makes you say that?" Micah shrugged. "You look mad when I talk about him." "I'm not mad," Imani said carefully. "It's just complicated." "What's complicated mean?" "It means—" She searched for words a 5-year-old could understand. "It means that sometimes grown-ups have a hard time figuring out the right thing to do." Micah seemed to consider this. "I think the right thing is to let Elias visit. He gave me Trice." He held up the plush triceratops that hadn't left his side since the park. Imani sighed. "Out of the mouths of babes." "You're right," she finally said. "I'll call him today." Micah's face lit up. "Really? Promise?" "I promise," she said, realizing she meant. Sat in her car for a long moment before dialing Elias's number. He answered on the first ring. "Imani, is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," she assured him. "I was just calling because Micah's been asking about you." "He has?" The hope in Elias's voice was palpable. "Yes, he wants to know when you're coming to visit." "I can be on a plane tonight," Elias said eagerly. "That's not necessary," Imani replied, though his enthusiasm touched something inside her. "What about this weekend? You said in your schedule that you'd be in New York for meetings on Friday." "You read my schedule," he noted, sounding pleased. "I wanted to be prepared," she said defensively. "I'll be there," Elias promised. "Friday evening. I could take you both to dinner." Imani hesitated. "Maybe just come to the apartment first, see how it goes." "Whatever you're comfortable with," he agreed quickly. "Thank you, Imani. This means a lot to me." "It's for Micah," she reminded him. "He's the one who wants to see you." "Right," Elias said, though she could hear the smile in his voice. "Just for Micah." After hanging up, Imani rested her forehead against the steering wheel. Was she making a mistake? Was she opening the door to more pain? For herself? For Micah? But she couldn't deny the joy in her son's eyes when he'd talked about Elias, or the change she'd seen in her ex-husband. The question was whether that change was real and lasting. She supposed they were about to find out. Friday evening arrived too quickly. Imani had spent the day cleaning the apartment and trying to calm her nerves. Micah was bouncing off the walls with excitement. "Is he bringing me another present?" Micah asked as he helped Imani arrange cookies on a plate. "I don't know, baby, and it's not polite to ask about presents." "But I hope he does," Micah continued, undeterred. "Maybe another dinosaur, or a spaceship." Imani smiled despite her anxiety. "Let's not get carried away." The doorbell rang at exactly 6 o'clock. Micah ran to the door before Imani could stop him. "Elias!" he cried as she opened it, revealing Elias standing there with a small gift bag and a bouquet of flowers. "Hey, buddy," Elias grinned, crouching down to Micah's level. "It's great to see you again." "You came!" Micah threw his arms around Elias's neck, surprising both adults. Elias's eyes met Imani's over Micah's shoulder, and she saw them glisten with emotion. "I promised, didn't I?" he said softly. Imani cleared her throat. "Come in, Elias." He straightened, handing her the flowers. Yellow roses, her favorite. She wondered if he remembered that detail from their marriage, or if it was just coincidence. "These are for you," he said. "And this," he held out the gift bag, "is for Micah." "What is it?" Micah asked eagerly, taking the bag. "Why don't you open it and see?" Elias suggested. Micah didn't need to be told twice. He tore into the bag, pulling out a children's book about dinosaurs. "Wow, look, Mommy. It has pictures of all the dinosaurs." "That's wonderful, sweetie," Imani said, putting the flowers in water. "What do you say to Elias?" "Thank you." Micah hugged the book to his chest. "Can we read it now?" "Why don't you show Elias your room first?" Imani suggested, needing a moment to collect herself. "Yeah, come see my room." Micah grabbed Elias's hand and tugged him down the hallway. Alone in the kitchen, Imani took a deep breath. Seeing Elias in her home, their home, was more unsettling than she'd anticipated. He looked good, too good, in his casual jeans and blue button-down that matched his eyes. His hair was slightly tousled, like he'd run his hands through it nervously before ringing the bell. She could hear Micah's excited chatter from down the hall, showing Elias his toys, his books, his favorite stuffed animals, and Elias's deeper voice, asking questions, showing genuine interest in everything Micah was saying. It was what she'd always wanted for Micah, a father who cared, who was present, who listened. But it had come 5 years too late, hadn't it? When they returned to the living room, Micah was holding Elias's hand and talking a mile a minute about his kindergarten class. "And Ms. Jenkins says I'm the best at counting in the whole class," he was saying proudly. "That doesn't surprise me at all," Elias replied. "You're a very smart boy." "Just like you," Micah said, looking up at him with admiration. "Mommy says you're super smart. That's why you have a big company." Elias looked surprised, then pleased. "Your mom said that about me?" Imani felt her cheeks warm. "I might have mentioned it once or twice." "Can we read my new book now?" Micah asked, climbing onto the couch and patting the spot next to him for Elias. "Of course," Elias said, sitting down. He glanced at Imani. "Would you like to join us?" She hesitated, then sat in the armchair across from them. "I'll listen from here." As Elias began to read, his voice animated and engaging, Imani watched Micah's face. Her son was completely enthralled, hanging on every word, nestled comfortably against Elias's side, like they'd been doing this for years instead of minutes. It was both beautiful and painful to watch. When the book was finished, Micah bombarded Elias with questions about dinosaurs, which he answered with surprising knowledge and patience. "How do you know so much about dinosaurs?" Micah asked, impressed. "I loved them when I was your age too," Elias explained. "I used to make my parents take me to the Natural History Museum every weekend." "Can we go to the museum?" Micah asked, looking between Elias and Imani. Imani opened her mouth to deflect, but Elias spoke first. "That's up to your mum," he said carefully, "but if she says it's okay, I'd love to take you sometime." All eyes turned to Imani. She felt cornered. "We'll see," she said finally. "Maybe next time Elias is in town." "When will that be?" Micah demanded. "Actually," Elias said, glancing at Imani, "I'm going to be here all next week. I'm looking at office spaces for the New York branch of my company." "So, you can visit every day?" Micah asked excitedly. "Micah," Imani cautioned, "Elias is very busy." "Not too busy," Elias assured him. "But we should check with your mum about her schedule too." Imani was surprised by his consideration. The old Elias would have made promises without consulting her, putting her in the position of being the bad guy if plans had to change. "How about we have dinner?" she suggested, surprising herself as much as Elias. "Would you like to stay, Elias? It's just spaghetti, nothing fancy." His face lit up. "I'd love to." Dinner was surprisingly comfortable. Micah dominated the conversation, asking Elias endless questions about California, his job, his favorite foods, and whether he had any pets. "I have a fish tank," Elias told him, "with tropical fish." "Cool, can I see it sometime?" "Micah," Imani interjected, "California is very far away." "But Elias said he's opening an office here," Micah pointed out. "Will you live here too?" Elias glanced at Imani before answering. "I might, buddy. I'm thinking about it." After dinner, Micah insisted on showing Elias his favorite TV show, and they settled on the couch again. Imani used the opportunity to clean up the kitchen, needing some space to process the evening. She was loading the dishwasher when Elias appeared in the doorway. "Need some help?" "No, I'm almost done," she said. "Where's Micah?" "He ran to the bathroom. He didn't want to miss any of the show." Elias leaned against the counter. "He's amazing, Imani. You've done an incredible job with him." "Thank you," she said, unexpectedly touched by the compliment. "I mean it. He's smart, kind, curious, everything a parent could hope for." "He is," she agreed. "He's the best thing that ever happened to me." A shadow crossed Elias's face. "I wish I'd been there. From the beginning." Imani closed the dishwasher, avoiding his eyes. "You're here now." "Am I?" he asked quietly. "Or am I just a visitor passing through?" Before she could answer, Micah raced back into the room. "The show's starting again. Come on, Elias." "I'll be right there, buddy," Elias promised, his eyes still on Imani. "Go," she said. "He's waiting." Elias hesitated, then followed Micah back to the living room, leaving Imani alone with her thoughts. By 8:30, Micah was yawning despite his protests that he wasn't tired. "Time for bed, mister," Imani announced. "But Elias is still here," Micah whined. "And it's still your bedtime," she said firmly. "Can Elias read me a bedtime story?" Micah asked hopefully. Imani looked at Elias, who seemed both eager and uncertain. "If your mom says it's okay," he said. "Please, Mommy." She nodded, unable to refuse when both pairs of identical amber-brown eyes were looking at her so hopefully. "Thank you for dinner," Elias said as Micah pulled him toward the bedroom. "It was delicious." "It was just spaghetti," Imani shrugged. "Still my favorite," he smiled. It had been when they were married. She was surprised he remembered. While Elias read to Micah, Imani tidied the living room, trying not to eavesdrop on their quiet conversation. But she couldn't help overhearing Micah's innocent question. "Elias, how come you and my mommy know each other?" There was a pause before Elias answered. "Your mom and I were very good friends a long time ago, before you were born." "Were you boyfriend and girlfriend?" Micah pressed. Another pause. "Something like that." "Then how come I never saw you before?" Imani held her breath, waiting for Elias's response. "Well," Elias said carefully, "I had to move to California for my job, and sometimes when people live far away from each other, they don't see each other for a long time." "Oh," Micah seemed to accept this. "But now you're coming back?" "I'd like to," Elias said softly. "If that's okay with you and your mom." "It's okay with me," Micah declared. "I like you." "I like you too, buddy. Very much." Imani leaned against the wall, tears pricking her eyes. It was all so simple to Micah, so uncomplicated. If only adult relationships were that easy. When Elias emerged from Micah's room, he found Imani waiting in the hallway. "He's almost asleep," Elias said. "He wanted me to say goodnight to you for him." "Thank you," Imani said. "For being careful with what you said." "I would never overstep," Elias assured her. "Not with something this important." They moved to the living room, an awkward silence falling between them. "I should probably go," Elias said, though he made no move toward the door. "Probably," Imani agreed, equally stationary. "Imani," Elias began, then stopped, seeming to search for words. "What happens now?" "What do you mean?" "With us. With Micah." He ran a hand through his hair. "I know you said we'd go at your pace, and I respect that. But I need to know what direction we're heading." Imani sank onto the couch. "I don't know, Elias. This is all happening so fast." "It doesn't have to," he said, sitting beside her, but keeping a respectful distance. "We can take all the time you need. But I want to be in Micah's life. Permanently." "And what does that look like to you?" she asked. "Whatever you're comfortable with, to start. Visits, phone calls, maybe weekend outings eventually." He hesitated. "I'd like to tell him the truth when you think he's ready." "That you're his father," Imani said, the word hanging heavy between them. "Yes." Elias's eyes were earnest. "I want to be his dad, Imani. not just his mum's friend who visits sometimes. And what if it doesn't work out? She challenged. What if you get busy with your new office? What if the novelty wears off? Hurt flashed across his face. Is that what you think this is? Novelty? I don't know what to think, Imani admitted. The Elias I knew was passionate about things, until he wasn't. That's not fair, he protested. Wasn't it? She asked quietly. You were passionate about me once, about our marriage, until your company became more important. Elias was silent for a long moment. I deserved that, he finally said. I was selfish back then, ambitious to a fault. I thought I could have everything without making sacrifices. He looked at her directly. I was wrong, and I lost the most important thing in my life because of it. Your marriage, Imani said. You, Elias corrected. I lost you. The intensity in his eyes made her look away. It's been 5 years, Elias. We're different people now. I know, he agreed. You're stronger, more confident, an amazing mother. He paused. And I hope I'm better than I was, less selfish, more aware of what really matters. And what matters to you now? She asked, almost afraid of his answer. Family, he said without hesitation. Connection, being present for the people I care about. He smiled ruefully. It took losing everything that mattered to figure that out. What do you mean? Elias sighed. After you left, I threw myself into work even more. The company grew. We went public. I made more money than I ever dreamed of. He shook his head. And I was completely alone. Empty. I had everything I thought I wanted, and none of it meant anything. Imani was surprised by his candor. So what changed? I did, he said simply. About 2 years ago, I had a health scare. Nothing serious in the end, but it made me think about my life. What I'd achieved, what I'd lost. He met her eyes. Who I'd lost. So you decided to change, she said skeptically. It wasn't that simple, Elias admitted. I started therapy, learned to delegate at work, started saying no to things that weren't essential. He laughed softly. My assistant nearly quit from the shock. Despite herself, Imani smiled. I can imagine. The point is, Elias continued, I'm not the same man who let you walk away 5 years ago. That man was a fool who didn't know what he had until it was gone. And the man sitting here now? Imani asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He's still figuring things out, Elias said honestly. But he knows what matters. And he'll do whatever it takes to be worthy of a second chance. The sincerity in his voice was almost too much to bear. Imani stood abruptly. It's getting late. Elias took the hint and rose as well. Of course, thank you for tonight, for letting me see Micah. He enjoyed it, Imani said, walking him to the door. And you? Elias asked, pausing in the doorway. Did you enjoy it at all? Imani hesitated, then nodded slightly. It wasn't as uncomfortable as I expected. Elias smiled. High praise indeed. Don't push it, she warned, but there was no heat in her words. When can I see him again? Elias asked. He mentioned the museum, Imani said. Maybe Sunday afternoon. Sunday would be perfect, Elias agreed eagerly. Would you come too? Imani hadn't planned on that. She'd been thinking of having a few hours to herself while Elias took Micah out, but the thought of them alone together still made her nervous. I suppose I could, she said reluctantly. Great. Elias smiled. He caught himself. It's a plan. As he turned to go, Imani called after him. Elias? He looked back hopefully. Yes? Thank you for the dinosaur book. Micah loves it. You're welcome, he said. Good night, Imani. Good night, Elias. She closed the door behind him, leaning against it with a sigh. The evening had gone better than she'd feared, and that was what concerned her most. Sunday at the museum was another step forward. Micah was in his element, racing from exhibit to exhibit with Elias right behind him, answering questions and sharing facts. Imani followed more slowly, watching their interaction with a mixture of joy and trepidation. Did you know that T-Rex couldn't actually run very fast? Elias was telling Micah. Scientists think they moved more like big birds than speedy monsters. Like chickens? Micah giggled. Kind of, Elias laughed. Scary chickens with very big teeth. Imani couldn't help smiling at their enthusiasm. This was the side of Elias she'd fallen in love with years ago. Passionate, engaging, full of random knowledge he was eager to share. They had lunch in the museum cafe, where Micah regaled them with everything he'd learned that morning. Imani was struck by how attentive Elias was, never checking his phone or seeming distracted. No business calls today, she asked, when Micah went to look at the dessert display. I turned my phone off, Elias said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Imani raised an eyebrow. The Elias Vaughn I knew would never turn off his phone. Like I said, I'm not that man anymore. He smiled. Besides, nothing is more important than this. After lunch, they visited the gift shop, where Elias bought Micah a dinosaur model kit, despite Imani's protests that it was too expensive. Let me spoil him a little, Elias pleaded. I have 5 years to make up for. You can't buy his love with presents, Elias, Imani warned. I know that, he said seriously. But seeing his face light up, I can't help myself. As they were leaving the museum, Micah spotted an ice cream cart outside. Can we get ice cream? He asked excitedly. It's a little cold for ice cream, don't you think? Imani said, noting the October chill in the air. It's never too cold for ice cream, Elias declared. Right, buddy? Right, Micah agreed enthusiastically. Outnumbered, Imani conceded. Fine, 1 scoop each. They sat on a bench, in the weak autumn sunshine, eating their ice cream, Micah chattering happily between them. To anyone passing by, they probably looked like a normal family enjoying a Sunday outing. The thought made Imani's chest tighten. This wasn't a normal family. This was complicated. Mummy, can Elias come over for dinner again? Micah asked as they finished their ice cream. Not tonight, sweetie. Elias probably has other plans. Actually, Elias said, I'm completely free, but I understand if you need some family time. Please, Mommy, Micah begged. He can help me build my dinosaur model. Imani hesitated. One part of her wanted to maintain boundaries, to keep Elias at a safe distance. But another part, a part she was trying very hard to ignore, enjoyed his company more than she wanted to admit. Okay, she found herself saying, but he leaves after dinner. Yes. Micah pumped his fist in victory. Elias's smile was more restrained, but his eyes conveyed his gratitude. Thank you. That evening, after another successful dinner, Elias and Micah sat at the coffee table, carefully assembling the dinosaur model. Imani watched from the kitchen as she loaded the dishwasher, struck by how natural they looked together. Careful with that piece, Elias was saying. It's delicate. Like this? Micah asked, concentrating hard. Perfect, Elias praised. You're really good at this. Micah beamed with pride. We can put it in my room when it's done. Where all your other dinosaurs are? Yup, it'll be the best one because we made it together. Imani's heart clenched at the pure joy in her son's voice. She'd always thought she was enough for him, that he didn't need a father figure in his life. But seeing him with Elias made her wonder if she'd been wrong. When the model was finished, Micah insisted on showing it to her. Look what we made. Mommy, it's wonderful, sweetie, she said honestly. You both did a great job. Elias did the hard parts, Micah admitted, but I helped a lot. You sure did, Elias agreed. I couldn't have done it without you. Micah yawned, the excitement of the day catching up with him. Time for bed, I think, Imani said. Can Elias read me a story again? Imani nodded, and Elias followed Micah to his room. When he returned 15 minutes later, Imani was sitting on the couch with 2 glasses of wine. He's out like a light, Elias said. The museum wore him out. It wore me out too, Imani admitted, offering him a glass. I thought you might want this before you go. Elias accepted the wine and sat beside her. Thank you for today, for everything. You're good with him, Imani said. Better than I expected. Is that a compliment? Elias asked with a half smile. An observation, she clarified, though she returned his smile. They sipped their wine in companionable silence for a moment. I go back to LA tomorrow, Elias finally said, just for a week to tie up some loose ends at the office. Micah will miss you, Imani said. Just Micah? Elias asked, his eyes searching hers. Imani looked away. It's been nice seeing you with him. What about seeing me with you? Elias pressed gently. Has that been nice too? Elias, I'm not pushing, he assured her. I promised we'd go at your pace, and I meant it, but I'd be lying if I said I only came back for Micah. Imani set her wineglass down. We can't just pick up where we left off. Too much has happened. I know that, Elias said. I'm not asking for that. I'm just asking if there might be something, someday. The hope in his eyes was almost painful to see. Part of her wanted to shut it down immediately, to protect herself from the possibility of being hurt again. But another part, a part that grew stronger with each day Elias was in their lives, wanted to take the risk. I don't know, she said honestly. Right now I'm focused on what's best for Micah. And what do you think that is? Elias asked. Imani thought for a moment. I think having you in his life is good for him. As long as you're consistent, as long as you don't disappear again. I won't, Elias promised fervently. I'm in this for the long haul, Imani, for him, and, if you'll let me, for you too. She stood abruptly. It's getting late. Elias took the hint and rose as well. Right. I should go. He hesitated. When I get back from LA, could we talk about making this more official? Maybe a regular schedule for visits? We can discuss it, Imani agreed. I'm not opposed to you having a relationship with Micah. Thank you, Elias said, his relief evident. That means everything to me. At the door, he turned to face her. I'll call every day while I'm gone, to talk to Micah. He'd like that, Imani said. Elias reached out hesitantly, then seemed to think better of it, and dropped his hand. Good night, Imani. Good night, Elias. After he left, Imani returned to the couch, picking up her wineglass, but not drinking. The apartment felt strangely empty now, despite the fact that it had been just her and Micah for 5 years. She pulled out her phone, scrolling to her sister's number. Hey, Maya, she said when her sister answered. Got a minute? I need some advice. Is this about Elias? Maya asked knowingly. Mum told me he's back. He's been spending time with Micah, Imani confirmed. A lot of time. And? How's it going? Surprisingly well, Imani admitted. Micah adores him already, and Elias is different. Different how? More present, more attentive, less obsessed with work. Imani sighed. He seems sincere about wanting to be in Micah's life. And in yours, Maya pressed. That's complicated. Complicated because you still have feelings for him, or complicated because you don't trust him? Both, Imani confessed. I look at him with Micah, and I see the man I fell in love with, but then I remember how he hurt me, and I'm afraid to let my guard down. People can change, Imani, Maya said gently. Look at Dad. That's what Mom said too. Smart woman, our mother, Maya laughed. So what are you going to do? I don't know, Imani said. Take it one day at a time, I guess. See if this new Elias is for real. And if he is, Imani didn't answer immediately, then I have some hard decisions to make. After hanging up, Imani walked to Micah's room, checking on him as she did every night. He was sound asleep, clutching both the plush triceratops from Elias and the framed photo of Imani that usually sat on his nightstand. But it wasn't her photo he was holding. It was the snapshot Elias had taken at the museum that day, the three of them together, smiling, with the giant T-Rex skeleton in the background. Elias must have printed it and given it to Micah when she wasn't looking. Her son was already creating a family in his mind, the family he'd never had, the family Imani had never thought possible. She gently removed the frame from his grip and placed it on the nightstand. As she did, she noticed a folded piece of paper tucked into the edge of the frame. Curious, she opened it. It was a note from Elias, written in his neat, precise handwriting. Micah, I had the best day with you and your mom today. Thank you for teaching me about all the dinosaurs I didn't know about. You're the smartest 5-year-old I've ever met. I have to go away for a little while. But I promise I'll come back. And every day I'm gone, I'll call you so we can talk about dinosaurs or space or whatever you want. Take care of your mum while I'm gone. She's the most special person in the world, just like you. Your friend. Elias' tears filled Imani's eyes as she refolded the note and placed it back in the frame. Whatever else Elias might be, whatever mistakes he'd made in the past, he was trying. Really trying. The question was whether she was brave enough to try too. Back in her own room, Imani pulled out an old photo album she kept in the back of her closet. She hadn't looked at it in years. Couldn't bear to see the memories of a time when she'd been so happy, so in love, only to have it all fall apart. The first photo was from their wedding day. Elias looking handsome in his tuxedo, gazing at her like she was the only woman in the world. She, radiant in her simple white dress, believing they had forever ahead of them. She turned the pages slowly, watching their story unfold in snapshots. The honeymoon in Hawaii, their first apartment, holidays with family, weekend trips to the beach. They had been happy once, before ambition and neglect had eroded their connection. Before Imani had felt so alone in her marriage that leaving seemed like the only option. Could they find happiness again? Not the same happiness. They were different people now. But something new, something stronger perhaps, built on the foundation of their shared love for Micah. Imani closed the album, her thoughts a jumble of hope and fear. One thing was certain. Elias Vaughn had walked back into her life as unexpectedly as he'd walked in 5 years ago on that red-eye flight, and nothing would ever be the same again. Her phone buzzed with a text message, made it back to the hotel. Thank you for an amazing day. Micah is the most incredible kid, and it's all because of you. Sleep well. Imani found herself smiling as she typed a reply. He is pretty amazing. Thanks for making today special for him. Safe travels tomorrow. She hesitated, then added, call when you land so Micah knows you arrived safely. His response was immediate. I will. And Imani, I meant what I said. I'm not going anywhere this time. As she set her phone down, Imani wondered if she was making a mistake by letting Elias back into their lives. But looking at the album on her lap, she wondered if the bigger mistake would be not giving them a second chance. The next week would give her time to think, to decide what she really wanted. But as she drifted off to sleep, her dreams were filled with the image of Micah's happy face as he sat between them at the museum, and Elias's gentle eyes watching her across the dinner table. For the first time in 5 years, Imani allowed herself to imagine a future that included Elias Vaughn. Not just as Micah's father, but as something more. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating, just like love itself. The week without Elias had given Imani time to think, but not the clarity she'd hoped for. Micah asked about him constantly, eagerly awaiting his daily phone calls. Each time, Elias was punctual, patient, and genuinely interested in hearing about Micah's day. He never forgets to call, Imani mentioned to her mother over coffee, even with the time difference and his schedule. Evelyn Carter smiled knowingly. People make time for what matters to them. He seems different, Imani admitted, more present. People can change when they have the right motivation, her mother said. Your father did. Everyone keeps saying that, Imani sighed. But what if it doesn't last? What if it does? Evelyn countered. Are you willing to miss out on happiness because you're afraid? Imani had no answer for that. Elias was due back in New York that evening. He'd promised to come straight from the airport to tuck Micah in, and Imani found herself checking the clock repeatedly as bedtime approached. Is Elias here yet? Micah asked for the 3rd time, already in his pajamas. His plane might be delayed, sweetie, Imani explained, though she'd been wondering the same thing. Elias hadn't called or texted since that morning, but he promised, Micah said, his lower lip trembling. I know, baby. Sometimes things happen that we can't control. As if on cue, her phone buzzed with a text message from Elias. Massive delays at LAX, still waiting to board, won't make it for bedtime. I'm so sorry. Can you put him on FaceTime? Imani felt a familiar disappointment settle in her stomach. So much for the new, reliable Elias. Is that him? Micah asked hopefully. Yes, sweetie, his plane is delayed. He can't make it tonight. Micah's face fell. But he promised. I know, Imani said, trying to keep the bitterness from her voice. But he wants to FaceTime with you before bed. I don't want FaceTime, Micah said, tears filling his eyes. I want him to be here. I know, baby. Imani pulled him into a hug. I'm sorry. She texted Elias back. Micah's upset. Maybe call tomorrow when you've landed. His response was immediate. Please, I need to explain to him. I don't want him to think I broke my promise on purpose. Reluctantly, Imani dialed Elias's number and put the phone on speaker. Micah? Elias's voice came through, filled with regret. Buddy, I'm so sorry. I'm still at the airport in California. You promised you'd come read me a story, Micah said accusingly. I know, and I feel terrible about breaking that promise, but the planes aren't flying because of bad weather. Mommy says we always keep our promises, Micah insisted. Imani winced. She taught him that, repeating the same lesson her own father had finally learned too late. Your mum is right, Elias said seriously. Promises are very important, and I promise you that as soon as I can get on a plane, I'm coming straight to see you, even if it's the middle of the night. Really? Micah asked, his anger fading. Really, Elias confirmed. In fact, I have a special surprise for you that I was going to bring tonight. What is it? Micah asked, perking up. If I told you, it wouldn't be a surprise, would it? Elias laughed. You'll have to wait until I get there. Micah seemed mollified. Okay, but you have to come tomorrow. As soon as humanly possible, Elias promised. Now, would you like me to tell you a dinosaur story over the phone instead? Micah nodded, then realized Elias couldn't see him. Yes, please. Imani left them to their story and went to the kitchen, her emotions a confusing mixture of relief and lingering doubt. On one hand, Elias hadn't simply blown them off. There were legitimate flight delays. On the other hand, it reminded her of all the times during their marriage when work or other obligations had taken precedence over her. When she returned to Micah's room 15 minutes later, he was laughing at something Elias was saying. Time to say goodnight, Imani announced. It's past your bedtime. 5 more minutes, Micah pleaded. No, sweetie, Elias needs to go too. He has a plane to catch. Good night, buddy, Elias said. I'll see you tomorrow, I promise. Pinky promise, Micah asked. The strongest kind, Elias assured him. Sleep tight. After Micah was settled, Imani picked up the phone. He's asleep. Thank you for letting me explain to him, Elias said. I feel terrible about missing tonight. It's not your fault, Imani admitted. Flights get delayed. Still, I know how it looks. Me making promises and then not showing up. He sighed. It's exactly what you were afraid of. Imani was surprised by his awareness. We'll survive one missed bedtime. I'll make it up to him, to both of you. Just get here safely, Imani said. Whenever that is. They're calling my flight now, finally, Elias said. I should land around midnight your time. That's late. We'll see you tomorrow. Actually, Elias hesitated, I was thinking I could still come by tonight, just to keep my promise to Micah. Even if he's asleep, I'll have been there. That's not necessary, Elias. It is to me, he insisted. This isn't about you or even Micah at this point. It's about me being the kind of man who keeps his word, no matter what. Imani was touched by his determination. Okay, text me when you land. If it's not too late, you can stop by. Thank you, Elias said, relief evident in his voice. And Imani, I've missed you this week, both of you. Before she could respond, he was gone, rushing to catch his flight. Imani sat on the edge of Micah's bed, watching her son sleep. He clutched his dinosaur toy, his face peaceful. Despite her lingering doubts, she found herself hoping Elias would make it tonight, not just for Micah's sake, but for her own. She'd missed him too. The soft knock at her door came just after 1 a.m. Imani, who had fallen asleep on the couch waiting, startled awake. She checked the peephole before opening the door to a very exhausted-looking Elias. I made it, he said, his voice hoarse from travel. You look terrible, Imani observed, stepping aside to let him in. Thank you, he smiled weakly. 20 hours in airports will do that to a person. You didn't have to come tonight, she said, leading him through the darkened apartment. Yes, I did, Elias insisted. Is he asleep? Out like a light. Has been for hours. Elias removed his shoes before quietly entering Micah's room. In the dim glow of the nightlight, he stood watching the sleeping boy for a long moment. Then gently he leaned down and placed a soft kiss on Micah's forehead. I promised I'd be here, he whispered. Sweet dreams, buddy. Back in the living room, Elias collapsed onto the couch. Thank you for letting me come so late. You really did have a terrible travel day, Imani said, noting the dark circles under his eyes. The worst, he agreed, but worth it. He pulled a small gift bag from his jacket pocket. This is for Micah, his surprise. Would you mind putting it somewhere he'll find it in the morning? Imani took the bag. What is it? A snow globe with dinosaurs inside. They had it at the airport gift shop. Not much of a surprise, but he'll like it. He'll love it, Imani corrected. Because it's from you. Elias smiled tiredly. I should go. Let you get some sleep. You're in no condition to drive, Imani said firmly. You can crash on the couch. Are you sure? It's that or I call you a cab, and honestly, I'm too tired for that. Elias laughed. The couch it is then. Imani found a spare pillow and blanket in the hall closet. It's not the plaza, but it'll do for one night. It's perfect, Elias assured her, taking the bedding. Thank you, Imani. Not just for this, but for everything, for giving me a chance with Micah. You're proving me wrong, she admitted quietly. About some things, anyway. That's a start, he smiled. Impulsively, Imani leaned down and kissed his cheek. Good night, Elias. Good night, he replied, surprise and pleasure in his voice. As she walked to her bedroom, Imani wondered what she was doing. Was she really considering letting Elias back into her life, not just as Micah's father, but as something more? Was she setting herself up for another heartbreak, or was she finally opening herself to the possibility of happiness? Elias! Micah's excited shout woke Imani the next morning. She glanced at the clock. 7:30 a.m. Elias had barely gotten 6 hours of sleep. She hurried to the living room to find Micah bouncing on the couch beside a groggy but smiling Elias. You came, Micah exclaimed. Mommy said you couldn't make it. I promised, didn't I? Elias said, sitting up and ruffling Micah's hair. I'm sorry I missed bedtime, buddy. That's okay, you're here now. Micah noticed the gift bag on the coffee table. Is that for me? It sure is, Elias nodded. A little something from California. Micah tore into the bag, his face lighting up when he saw the snow globe. Wow, look, Mommy, dinosaurs in the snow. It's beautiful, sweetie, Imani said, leaning against the doorframe. What do you say to Elias? Thank you. Micah threw his arms around Elias's neck. You're welcome, buddy, Elias said, hugging him back. His eyes met Imani's over Micah's shoulder, filled with emotion. Who wants breakfast? Imani asked. I'm thinking pancakes. Me, Micah cheered. Sounds amazing, Elias agreed. Can I help? You can set the table, Imani suggested. Micah will show you where everything is. In the kitchen, Imani mixed pancake batter while listening to Micah giving Elias a very serious tour of the silverware drawer. It felt strangely domestic, like they'd been doing this for years instead of days. When she brought the stack of pancakes to the table, Elias was already pouring orange juice for Micah. These look delicious, he said appreciatively. Mommy makes the best pancakes, Micah declared, even better than McDonald's. High praise indeed, Elias laughed. As they ate breakfast together, Imani was struck by how comfortable it all felt, how right. Despite her lingering fears, she couldn't deny that something was happening here, something that felt like family. After breakfast, Elias helped clean up while Micah played with his snow globe. So, Elias said, drying a plate, I was thinking maybe we could do something today, all three of us. Don't you need to rest? Imani asked. You had a rough trip. I'm fine, he assured her. Nothing coffee can't fix, and I missed you both this week. Missed his dinosaur buddy, you mean, Imani teased. Him too, Elias smiled, but mostly his beautiful mother. Imani looked away, flustered by the compliment. Elias, too much? He asked, reading her expression. Just unexpected. I've been thinking a lot this week, Elias said, setting down the dish towel. About Micah, of course, but also about you, about us. There is no us, Imani reminded him, though the words felt hollow even to her. Isn't there? Elias challenged gently. When I'm with you and Micah, it feels like there could be. Before Imani could respond, her phone rang. It was her boss, James. I need to take this, she said, grateful for the interruption. In the living room, she answered the call. James, hi, is everything okay? Imani, I'm so sorry to bother you on a Saturday, her boss said, sounding stressed, but we have a situation with the Henderson account. The presentation is incomplete, and they've moved the meeting up to Monday morning. Imani's heart sank. The Henderson account was their biggest client. What do you need me to do? I hate to ask, but could you come in today, just for a few hours to help finalize the presentation? Today? Imani glanced at Micah, happily playing on the floor, and Elias waiting patiently in the kitchen. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't critical, James assured her. You know the account better than anyone. Imani sighed. Okay, I'll be there in an hour. After hanging up, she turned to Elias apologetically. I have to go into the office. Emergency with a big client. No problem, Elias said easily. We can reschedule. The thing is, Imani hesitated, I'll be gone most of the day. I was going to call my mom to watch Micah, but I could watch him, Elias offered immediately. Imani bit her lip. I don't know, Elias. He can be a handful. Imani, Elias said gently, he's my son. I want to spend time with him, and this would give us a chance to bond without you running interference. I don't run interference, she protested. You hover, Elias corrected with a smile. It's understandable, but we need time to get to know each other. Imani considered the offer. It would be a big step, leaving Micah alone with Elias for the first time, but maybe it was time to take that step. Okay, she agreed finally. But I'll have my phone. Call me if you need anything. We'll be fine, Elias assured her. Right, buddy? He called to Micah. Right, Micah agreed enthusiastically, though he had no idea what he was agreeing to. Micah, sweetie, Imani said, kneeling beside him. Mommy has to go to work for a little while. Would you like to stay here with Elias? Micah's face lit up. Yes. Can we go to the park? If that's okay with your mum, Elias said, looking to Imani for approval. The park is fine, she nodded. Just make sure he wears his jacket, and he needs sunscreen, and he shouldn't have too much sugar. Imani, Elias interrupted gently. We'll be fine. I promise. She took a deep breath. I know, this is new for me. For all of us, Elias agreed. But it's a good new, isn't it? Looking at Micah's excited face and Elias's reassuring smile, Imani had to admit that it was. All day at the office, Imani found herself checking her phone for messages from Elias. But there were only a few: a photo of Micah at the park, a selfie of them getting ice cream, a text saying they were back home watching a movie. Everything seemed to be going perfectly, almost too perfectly. By the time she left the office at 6 p.m., Imani had worked herself into a state of anxiety. What if Micah had gotten too attached too quickly? What if Elias decided fatherhood was harder than he expected? What if everything fell apart? When she opened her apartment door, she was greeted by the smell of something delicious cooking and the sound of laughter from the kitchen. Mommy's home, Micah shouted, running to greet her. Hi, baby, she said, hugging him tightly. Did you have a good day? The best day ever, Micah declared. We went to the park and had ice cream and fed the ducks, and Elias pushed me super high on the swings, and now we're making spaghetti. Wow, that does sound like the best day ever, Imani smiled, relieved by his enthusiasm. Come see. Micah tugged her toward the kitchen. Elias stood at the stove stirring a pot of sauce. He wore one of her aprons, which looked comically small on his frame. Welcome home, he greeted her with a warm smile. Hope you're hungry. Starving, she admitted, taking in the scene. The kitchen was spotless despite the meal in progress, and Micah had clearly been helping, evidenced by the small step stool pulled up to the counter. I stirred the sauce, Micah announced proudly. He's been a great sous chef, Elias confirmed. Dinner's almost ready. I'll just wash up, Imani said, still processing the domestic tableau before her. In the bathroom, she stared at her reflection in the mirror. The scene in her kitchen was everything she'd ever wanted. A loving father cooking dinner with their son, laughter filling the apartment, the feeling of coming home to family. But was it real? Or was it just a beautiful illusion that would shatter the moment reality set in? When she returned to the kitchen, Elias was setting the table while Micah carefully placed napkins beside each plate. Perfect timing, Elias said. Have a seat. The spaghetti was delicious, and the conversation flowed easily as Micah recounted every detail of their day together. Elias occasionally caught Imani's eye across the table, his expression a mixture of happiness and something deeper, a question perhaps, or a hope. After dinner, Micah insisted on showing Imani the leaf collection they'd started at the park. Each leaf was carefully pressed between the pages of a notebook Elias had bought him. And Elias says when we have enough, we can make a special frame to put them in, Micah explained excitedly. That sounds wonderful, sweetie, Imani said, touched by the thoughtfulness of the project. Bath time now, she announced when Micah had shown her every leaf. Can Elias stay until bedtime? Micah asked hopefully. If he wants to, Imani said, looking at Elias. Try and stop me, Elias smiled. I'll clean up dinner while you handle bath duty. By the time Micah was bathed and in his pajamas, Elias had not only cleaned the kitchen, but also prepared a pot of coffee and set out 2 mugs in the living room. Story time, Micah called, climbing into bed. Which book tonight? Imani asked, scanning the bookshelf. No book, Micah declared. I want Elias to tell me a story about when he was little. Elias looked surprised but pleased by the request. Let me think. He sat on the edge of Micah's bed. How about the time I built a fort in my backyard and tried to live in it for a week? Yes, Micah agreed enthusiastically. Imani sat in the chair by the window, watching as Elias spun a tale of childhood adventure, complete with animated hand gestures and different voices for each character. Micah was enthralled, his eyes wide with wonder. This was the Elias she'd fallen in love with, creative, playful, fully present in the moment. She'd almost forgotten this side of him during the difficult last months of their marriage, when work had consumed him completely. When the story ended, Micah was fighting to keep his eyes open. Time for sleep, buddy, Elias said softly. Will you be here tomorrow? Micah asked drowsily. Elias glanced at Imani before answering. If your mum says it's okay. Please, Mommy, Micah pleaded. We'll see, Imani said, her standard response to difficult questions. That means yes, Micah informed Elias confidently before his eyes fluttered shut. In the living room, Elias poured coffee for both of them. He's amazing, Imani. So smart, so kind. You've done an incredible job raising him. Thank you, she said, accepting the mug. It looks like you two had a good day. The best, Elias confirmed. He's so easy to love. Unlike his mother, Imani asked lightly. Elias's expression turned serious. You've never been easy to love, Imani, but always worth the effort. The honesty in his voice made her look away. Elias, I know, he interrupted gently. You're not ready to talk about us, but I need you to know something. He took a deep breath. These past 2 weeks with you and Micah have been the happiest of my life. Being with him, being with both of you, has shown me what really matters. And what's that? Imani asked quietly. Family, Elias said simply. Love. Being present for the people who matter most. Those are beautiful words, Imani acknowledged. But words are easy, Elias. Actions are what count. I know that, he nodded, and I'm trying to show you with my actions. Today was a start, wasn't it? It was, she admitted. You were great with him. Because I love him, Elias said. Just like I still love his mother. The words hung in the air between them, too important to be casually acknowledged, too powerful to be dismissed. Elias, you don't have to say anything, he assured her. I know I hurt you, I know I don't deserve a second chance, but I'm asking for one anyway. Imani set down her coffee cup, her hands shaking slightly. I'm scared, she admitted. Not just for Micah, but for myself. You broke my heart once. I don't think I could survive it again. I can't promise I'll never hurt you, Elias said honestly. No one can promise that. But I can promise that I'll never take you for granted again, that I'll make you and Micah my priority. Always. How can I believe that? Imani asked, voicing her deepest fear. How do I know the ambitious Elias won't come back as soon as there's a big deal or an important meeting? Elias was silent for a moment, considering her question. Do you know why I was in LA this week? For work, she shrugged. To resign as CEO of my company. Imani stared at him. What? I'm stepping down, Elias confirmed. I'll stay on the board, but the day-to-day operations will be handled by someone else. But why? You built that company from nothing. And it nearly cost me everything that matters, Elias said. I don't want to be that man anymore, Imani. The man who puts work above family. The man who misses bedtimes and anniversaries because he's chasing the next big deal. So what will you do? Imani asked, stunned by his revelation. The New York office will still open, but I'll be a consultant, not the CEO. 20 hours a week, max. The rest of my time will be for you and Micah. He leaned forward. If you'll have me. Imani was speechless. This was a sacrifice she had never expected, never even considered asking for. You're giving up your company for us? I'm choosing what matters most, Elias corrected, and it's not even a difficult choice. Tears filled Imani's eyes. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything right now, Elias assured her. Just think about it, about us, about giving Micah the family he deserves. And if I'm not ready, Imani asked, needing to know there were no ultimatums. Then we'll go as slow as you need, Elias promised. I'm not going anywhere, Imani, not this time. She studied his face, looking for any sign of doubt or hesitation, but all she saw was sincerity, determination, and love. I should go, Elias said, standing. It's been a long day, and you probably need some space to think. Imani nodded, walking him to the door. Thank you for today, for taking care of Micah. Thank you for trusting me with him, Elias replied. It means more than you know. At the door, he hesitated. I meant what I said, Imani, about loving you. I never stopped, not even when we were apart. Before she could respond, he leaned in and kissed her cheek softly. Good night. After he left, Imani leaned against the closed door, her heart racing. Elias had given up his position as CEO, the thing he'd worked for his entire adult life, for a chance to be with her and Micah. If that wasn't proof that he'd changed, what was? She walked to Micah's room, watching him sleep peacefully. He'd had the best day of his life today, according to his own words, because of Elias, because for the first time, he'd experienced what it was like to have a father who was fully present, fully engaged. Didn't he deserve to have that every day? And didn't she deserve a second chance at happiness too? The next afternoon, Elias took them to a fall festival in Central Park. Micah raced from activity to activity, pumpkin painting, hay rides, apple bobbing, with boundless energy. Elias matched his enthusiasm every step of the way. He's going to crash hard tonight, Imani commented, as they watched Micah attempt to carry a pumpkin almost as big as himself. Worth it, Elias grinned. Look how happy he is. It was true. Micah's face was alight with joy, his laughter contagious, as he struggled with his oversized pumpkin. Here, buddy, let me help, Elias offered, lifting the heavy pumpkin easily. We can put it by our door, Micah declared. Our door? Elias asked, glancing at Imani. He means my apartment, she clarified quickly. Right, Elias nodded, a flicker of disappointment crossing his face. As they wandered through the festival, Imani found herself watching Elias more than Micah, the way he knelt to Micah's level when they talked, the way he listened intently to every word, no matter how trivial, the way his face lit up at Micah's smallest achievements. He was a natural father, the father she'd always hoped he could be, and if she was honest with herself, he was also still the man she'd fallen in love with, just a better version, more mature, more grounded, more aware of what truly mattered. When Micah ran ahead to look at a cider stand, Elias turned to Imani. Penny, for your thoughts. You've been quiet all afternoon. I've been thinking about what you said last night, she admitted. About resigning as CEO. And? It's a big sacrifice, Elias. I never asked you to do that. You didn't have to, he said. It was my decision. The right one. Are you sure you won't regret it? She pressed. The company is your baby. No, Elias said firmly. Micah is my baby. The company is just a company. Imani was struck by the simplicity and truth of his statement. 5 years ago, Elias would never have said those words. His company had been everything to him, his identity, his purpose, his passion. What changed you? She asked softly. Really? Elias was quiet for a moment. Remember I told you about that health scare? Imani nodded. It was a little more serious than I let on, he admitted. For a while the doctors thought it might be cancer. Elias, Imani gasped, why didn't you tell me? It turned out to be nothing, he assured her. But for 3 weeks I thought I might be dying. And you know what my biggest regret was? What? She whispered. That I'd lost you, he said simply. That I'd had the most amazing woman in the world, and I'd been too blind, too obsessed with success to realize what I had until it was gone. Tears filled Imani's eyes. Elias, when I got the all clear, I promised myself that if I ever got a second chance with you, I wouldn't waste it. He reached for her hand. And then there you were, on that plane, with our son, like some kind of miracle. Imani squeezed his hand, too overwhelmed to speak. Mom, Dad, look what I found, Micah called, running toward them with a small pumpkin-shaped stress ball. They both froze. Dad. Micah had called Elias Dad. The lady gave it to me, Micah explained, oblivious to the emotional earthquake he'd just caused. Isn't it cool? Very cool, buddy, Elias managed, his voice thick with emotion. Can we get cider? Micah asked, already moving on to the next excitement. Sure, Imani said automatically, still processing what had just happened. As Micah ran ahead again, Elias turned to her. Imani, He doesn't know, she said quickly. It was just a slip. Was it? Elias challenged gently. Or is he seeing something we've been dancing around for weeks? Before she could answer, Micah called for them again, and they followed him to the cider stand. But the moment lingered between them, unresolved but powerful. Later, as they walked home with a very tired Micah between them, the boy suddenly stopped. Can I ask you something? He said, looking up at Elias. Anything, buddy, Elias replied. Are you my dad? The question, so direct and innocent, stopped them both in their tracks. Imani knelt beside Micah, searching for the right words. Micah, sweetie. Yes, Elias interrupted, kneeling as well. I am your dad. Imani shot him a look, but Elias held her gaze steadily. It was time for truth. Why didn't you tell me? Micah asked, confusion in his voice. Because, Imani said carefully, grown-up relationships can be complicated. Elias and I needed to figure some things out first. Are you mad at him? Micah pressed. Is that why he didn't live with us before? No, baby, Imani assured him. I'm not mad at Elias. We had some growing up to do, both of us. But now he's back, Micah said, looking between them. And he can stay, right? He can be my dad all the time? Imani met Elias's eyes over Micah's head. In that moment, she knew what she wanted, what they all needed. If that's what you want, she said softly, and if it's what Elias wants. More than anything, Elias said fervently. Micah's face lit up. So we can be a family. Like Joey at school, he has a mom and a dad who live together. Imani took a deep breath. We can be a family, yes, but Elias and I need to take things slow. Do you understand? Micah nodded solemnly. Like when you make cookies. You can't rush or they get burned. Elias laughed. Exactly like that, buddy. But you'll still be my dad, right? Even if you don't live with us yet? Forever and always, Elias promised. No matter what happens, I will always be your dad, and I will always love you. Micah seemed satisfied with this answer. Good, because I told all my friends my dad was coming to Career Day next month. Imani and Elias exchanged surprised looks, then burst into laughter. "I'd be honored," Elias said, ruffling Micah's hair. As they continued walking, Micah now between them, holding both their hands, Imani felt a sense of peace settle over her. It wouldn't be easy. They had 5 years of separation to overcome, trust to rebuild, a new family dynamic to create. But for the first time, she believed it was possible. That they could be a family, different from what she'd once imagined, but perhaps stronger because of all they'd been through. At her apartment door, Micah insisted on placing his pumpkin just so, with Elias's help. As they worked together, Imani watched them, her son and his father, so alike in their focused expressions, their amber brown eyes, their gentle hands. When Micah was finally in bed, exhausted from his big day, Imani joined Elias on the couch. "I'm sorry if I overstepped," he said immediately. When he asked if I was his dad, "You didn't," Imani assured him. It was time for him to know the truth. "And us?" Elias asked hesitantly. "What's our truth, Imani?" She took his hand, intertwining their fingers. "Our truth is that we loved each other once, enough to create a beautiful little boy, and maybe we never really stopped." Hope dawned in Elias's eyes. "Does that mean—" "It means I'm willing to try," Imani said, "for Micah's sake and for ours." "That's all I'm asking for," Elias said softly. "A chance to show you who I am now, who we could be together." "It won't be easy," she warned. "We have a lot of history to work through." "Nothing worth having ever is," Elias replied, "but I'm ready for the work, Imani. I've never been more ready for anything in my life." As if to prove his point, he leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. But Imani found herself meeting him halfway, their lips coming together in a kiss that felt both familiar and entirely new. When they separated, Elias rested his forehead against hers. "I never stopped loving you," he whispered. "I just didn't know how to love right, but I want to learn, for him, and for you." Imani smiled, her heart full. "I think you're already learning," she said softly. "We both are." Outside her window, the New York skyline glittered against the night sky. 5 years ago, she'd left this city with a broken heart and an unborn child, certain she'd never find happiness with Elias Vaughn again. Now, sitting beside him on her couch, their son sleeping peacefully down the hall, she realized that sometimes life offered second chances when you least expected them, and sometimes those chances came in the form of a seat across the aisle on a red-eye flight from Los Angeles to New York. "Stay," she whispered, making her decision. "Not just tonight, but tomorrow and the day after that." "For how long?" Elias asked, his eyes shining with hope. Imani smiled. "Let's start with forever and see where it takes us." And as he pulled her into his arms, Imani knew that their journey was just beginning. There would be challenges ahead, obstacles to overcome, trust to rebuild. But for the first time in 5 years, she was looking forward to the future, their future, together as a family. Sometimes the hardest journeys led to the most beautiful destinations, and sometimes love deserved a second chance to get it right. The end.